Hmm. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, John.
Let's see, we have one, two, three. So we're waiting for a fourth for a quorum. Let's take a look here. One, two. Oh no, we have four. Okay, good. I'm staring right at your Zaga and
I still can't
um
vote though because I haven't been sworn in.
Oh, then
oh,
then you don't have
interesting.
I'm
four.
still waiting for the letter. Lori said she
You-
was gonna do it before she left, but I just don't know.
Well, I saw it, I signed it going up to
Okay.
the selectmen and everything like that, so it's in play.
Okay.
But there are a number of people who were out at the town hall this week,
Sure.
so that may have slowed some things down. Let's see. Sarah is in Africa, I believe. I heard several times.
And
Uh,
she can't
and
join us
uh,
from
and
Africa?
then
Time
so that
difference
would
isn't
leave.
that bad.
What's that?
Oh, I'm joking. The time difference isn't that bad.
No, no, I don't understand. I mean, I've called in from vacation. Yeah. So what would be yeah, 3, 4 in the morning. The I'm going to text Amy, see if she's will be coming. So for people waiting for the meeting to start, we're just waiting for an additional Conservation Commission member to log on so that we have a quorum for the evening. Oh, and here she is. Great. Sweet. Okay, so welcome everyone to the July 23rd, 2025 Dover Conservation Commission hearing. Um, I'm going to read off a governor's proclamation. It gives us Zoom authorization here. Following guidance issued by the governor regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate may do so by using Zoom video conferencing technology. To join the meeting by video conferencing, use a computer or a tablet and use the link that it was noted on this week's agenda. Okay, given that, are there any citizens, Dover residents here who have anything to bring to our attention prior to our starting this evening's agenda that may not be on the agenda? Um, Hearing none, we'll move on to the start of our meeting. First up is 129, 143 Dedham Street, an amendment requesting an amendment requested for an existing order of conditions. Janet, why don't you fill us in?
Sure. So this is an amendment request. As you'll recall, the original order of conditions was for tear down of a large home, construction of a large stable. There was invasive removal work, management work, some tree removals, and also cleaning an existing culvert and repairing the head wall, I believe. But since the work has started on the property, and the consultant Mark Cooperman might give us a little bit more of an update on where they are before launching into the amendment. But this amendment is for 4 particular elements that were not included in the original order of conditions. just going back a little bit, a legal ad was submitted for this. The abutters were notified as required. In general, DEP allows an amendment to an order of conditions as long as the work is within the general original scope of the original permit. If it's above and beyond or something completely different than had been approved, then it does trigger a new NOI. But in reviewing the amendment components with Mark, it seemed that an amendment was appropriate. So in my report, I just listed briefly what's being proposed: replacing an existing deteriorated culvert with an improved culvert structure that will also require removal of accumulated organic sediment from the stream bed, land underwater, removal of, I believe it's 2 dead or declining ash trees, and then a waiver request for additional herbicide use for invasive species management. So those are the components for the amendment request. A number of waivers are required, and we can talk about those in more detail. So I did do a site inspection with Mark some time ago to view the status of the culvert. I agree, it's not going to last much longer. This would be the time to replace it while there is already site work and disturbance going on. I'm also familiar with their invasive management work, which is all a positive thing. And they did get a waiver for limited pest herbicide use in the past. And I just had a couple of recommendations, and we can also talk about those in more detail after seeing the site plan. But it's my understanding that even this is a small culvert and a replacement, but it still does trigger the mass stream crossing standards. And because it is a replacement, they need to meet the standards to the maximum extent practicable. So that's up to the applicant to make sure those standards are met. And if they cannot be met, then provide a rationale for that. And I also felt it would be important for the town engineer to review the proposal for compliance with our stormwater management standards. The other thing I'll just add before passing it on to Mark is I did not see a professional engineer stamp on the culvert site plan. I saw that Grady Engineering, some components were from Grady Engineering, but it looked like it was Matthew Cunningham Landscape Design. But we would prefer to see a PE stamp on the culvert specs. And then also, I just want to make sure that a copy of your proposal and site plan did go to DEP, to the Nero office, so we can get any comments from them on this. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Janet. So Mark, do you want to give us your side of things?
Yes, yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commission, and Janet. Thank you, Janet, for that good overview. Yes, so Janet had a great summary of the 4 items requested. Just to reiterate, one is, and I'll explain the rationale in a minute, the culvert improvement. Subsequently associated with that, removal of just a small portion of the accumulated organic material that builds up in the stream there by the culvert. Some additional dead ash trees, as we're dealing with on the property with, of course, the ash decline. And then just to get clarification, make sure on some additional herbicide use as we have made progress with the removals, but the addition of added sunlight along a lot of these edges has resulted, obviously, in, as it often does, in an absolute outburst of bittersweet. I mean, I see a lot of it, and this is exceptional. So that being said, I think why don't we tackle the items in order, John, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Probably would it be helpful to share screen and give us an overlay there?
yeah, would you like if you can share, I can pull up the photos,
Mm-hmm.
orient everybody. right from the submittal. So if you give me a share,
Yeah, it should be. Let me,
says it's not, do I need to send you a request or?
no, it looks like I should have, it says that it's open to sharing. Let me just see. One participant at a time. Let's see. I'm just gonna go out of that and then go back in and see if, yep. So it's not letting you share?
Let's see if it is now. You're going to send request.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. That come through?
Perfect. Yes, it did. Thank you, John. Okay, should be able to see.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody can see the
Yep.
very simply the submittal. So this is the culvert that currently exists within the farm, crossing spanning the farm road rather, that now connects 129 to 143 Dedham Street. And just to go back to a portion of the plan that's located right here. So 143 and all the current work that Janet described under the NOI is all over here. And 129 Amelia Farm is over here.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the channel is an intermittent. It is in something I do want to talk about both with the commission and with Janet. The channel / ditch was is historically man-made. It was obviously dug during the Peabody era on the farm to basically move water around the paddocks and ultimately to the wetland at Dedham Street. The channel is very distinct, as you can see, with extensive, let me zoom in a little bit here for everyone, an extensive amount of freeboard. The current culvert, as you can see in its current status here last fall, was greater than 50% blocked. Subsequently, our contractors on site did go ahead and have a company come out and scope and clean the pipe. We determined it is a 24-inch clay pipe that's in decent condition. However, in a minute, I'll get to how we got to where we are now with considering replacing it. Even in its obstructed state, we never had an issue with water flows or water impoundment issues. So it's highly sort of oversized for the amount of water that this very intermittent system sees, even during heavy storm events. As it is now, 100% open, obviously that'll be even less. But in talking with long-term staff from the farm, both prior to Catherine's current ownership, never seen the water come over the bank here, even in that totally clogged state. So here we are now. So we have this clay pipe, and the current notice of intent allowed for the repair and improvement of these head walls on either side. And as the team sort of worked through things and had the pipe inspected and cleaned out, and realizing it is a clay pipe, and it did have some minor fractures in it. Also, the amount of work going on, we do have it currently steel plated to minimize disturbance going over it. But that, coupled with the sort of rejuvenated use the farm is going to be getting between 129 and 143, we suggested to the applicant that this may be the time to think about replacing it. And very simply, we wanted to keep this pretty straightforward, because we're going to be in here working on the head walls anyway. We figured, why not slightly improve the culvert to the best extent practicable and increase it to obviously a modern reinforced concrete pipe at 30 inches versus the 24, which, as I described, the 24 is more than enough. The channel itself, going back to the channel, it doesn't really fit, in my opinion, the intent and definition of the quote unquote stream crossing standards. It is extremely intermittent. It's not a fish passageway by any means. Nothing, no obligate aquatics are living in here in any form because it's consistently intermittent and in fact spends most of the year dry. There is a very extensive organic layer that has built up around the pipe even after cleaning. And that's just, historical. The pipe is bedded a little too low, in our opinion, currently. The invert would be a little bit too low. And that's what's happened. They cleaned out just enough in front to scope and clean it. So we felt that given, as Janet had mentioned, given what's about to go on with regard to repairing and improving the head walls, that it probably would be prudent to consider replacing the pipe at that time so we don't have to go back through this in 5 to 10 years, come before the commission and undo all the work that was done in order to minimize the disturbance. We were hoping, with the commission's understanding and approval, that if we can proceed, we could take advantage of the dry season and do this work in late August, early September, as we often do for this type of work. Concurrently with the replacement of the pipe, we also looked at, and I think, can everybody see this screen? Has it switched over?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep, great, thank you. So here are our drawings. I want to see if they're on here. Actually, it may not be shown. We concurrently also wanted to provide a very, here we go. Yep, a very simple kind of point of maintenance moving forward. So if the pipe were replaced here, the culvert were replaced, this area within that first 25 feet, give or take, is where the majority of the accumulated organics are. And moving forward in the future, as shown on the very diagrammatic representation in our submittal, we'd like to just install some stone markers so that in the future, maintenance can involve removing the organic muck within here. So these would be the markers here, and approximate locations were shown right here in the stream, and they would just denote an area by which to allow for easy access with either a mini excavator or something like that, or a bucket loader to shovel into, and just to be able to basically get the majority of that muck that accumulates right by the pipe on either side. And that includes items 1 and 2 on the request for amendments. With regard to the stream crossing standards, yes, we understand them very well. We work with them all the time. We really feel in this case that we're providing a net improvement in trying to minimize the amount of disturbance to where this can be done in a very expeditious way, in a very minimally invasive way, by simply upgrading the culvert that is there with a slightly larger version in a modern material that's going to last, the next 50, 100 years, whatever it is. And really don't want to go down the path of, and I understand the stream crossing standards and why they are that way. It just doesn't seem to fit the existing model here. This is a man-made ditch, trench, whichever you wish to call it, that does classify as an intermittent channel, of course, under the bylaw. But it just doesn't fit the model necessarily for some of the relevant items. For example, the crossing span and the openness criteria, it would result in a massive project here that we just do not feel is necessary. We have a decent pipe in place, and we're trying to, excuse me, make sense of a project that is approved, and just make sure we're thorough in everything we can do to potentially avoid any impacts down the road, and also provide an upgrade to the system for slightly easier flow moving forward and easier maintenance and continued flow, so that we don't end up with a situation where the pipe is 50% constricted or more, down the road, as it has been for probably decades.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, have you run across anything where, number one, whether an intermittent stream makes a difference for stream water, for stream crossings or drainage. If something is being used for drainage as opposed to a natural stream flow.
Yeah, great question, John. Thank you. Yes. So exactly. So yes, something that, and that's how I'm looking at this system, that it's more of equivalent to almost a DPW type situation for a drainage issue, and that replacement of, an emergency replacement of a culvert or slightly scheduled replacement of a culvert would not necessarily apply to the stream crossing standards, because it is part of a drainage system that was man-made. Sure, it now sits as an intermittent channel under the bylaw, but that is sort of the angle I'm looking at it from, and believe it falls under, because we have run into this. And as Jana pointed out, to the I want to be clear, to the best extent practicable, that's what I felt this solution was, the best extent practicable, and can't pretend to meet the criteria for like crossing span and openness, because now we're talking about a much larger structure. Keep in mind too, we're only talking about a 12 to 15 foot internal roadway here, within the farm. So, it's another thing to consider when we think of the stream crossing standards. Again, it's only here because that crossing, that cart path was historically put there, on Amelia Farm, for some movement of horses between paddocks. And that's really why it's there. It's fairly diminutive. It's fairly innocuous. And I'm very confident that ecologically, that culvert is not in any way impeding the function, both hydrologically or ecologically, of that drainage system.
So this is it's a farm trench.
The farm trench, absolutely. Yeah, it's an old farm. Yeah. In fact, historically, they would go through and maintain it with the crew by hand, and remove leaves and things to keep it moving.
And so the stream water standards, don't they start with the goal of protecting fish?
Yes.
Primarily.
Yes. Fish and wildlife, and wildlife. In a situation where, one of the other things, maybe another way to explain this too, is the bank is very unnatural, as you can see in the way it was cut. In the stream crossing standards, the wildlife portion is to protect that more natural bank that critters and or fish during flood situations, may use. That's not the case here. This goes from about this much water to dry in a couple of days, and may sit that way for months and months. Even during a flash event, it may come halfway up the bank for a very brief period until the wetland level's out, and then it goes right back down. So the bank in this case is pretty consistent throughout, and it's nearly, it's extremely steep, probably 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1 at its shallowest point. And the whole point of that openness and crossing is for that more natural transition. That's why I'm saying, like, where would, if you were to even try and address that in the stream crossing standards, you'd be up here somewhere. Totally impractical.
And you'd have to be cutting down the slope and expanding the
exactly.
Yeah. So for commissioners, Janet sent me a bunch of links for stream crossing standards, and it's primarily geared towards true perennial stream crossings, if not river crossings. The first few pages start with assuming that you have 6 feet of height over your stream. So in essence, bridges is what it looks at, and it does not address small culverts like this directly. It has some suggestions for them relative to what angle they go through, what sort of drop they have, ensuring that you lower the velocity or make sure you don't increase it by having a steep drop from the invert to the outlet and things of that nature. It seems to me, Mark, is a general culvert, depending on the length, the formula that they use, so that they ensure a coefficient of, I think it was 0.82,
Yes,
is
point eight.
is virtually impossible to get with a normal round culvert that's
Correct.
over 12 feet. Yeah.
Correct. Unless you start, again, unless, you went from something like this to like a 48-inch or a 60-inch culvert, which would now we have a problem with the roadbed and, like you said, the banks. And
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
right. It just, seems to be prohibitive and not necessarily applicable because, as you mentioned, they're geared towards perennial streams and in particular rivers.
Mhm.
When they say, the optimal solution would be a bridge. Well, I think that kind of tells you what they're geared towards.
Mhm.
This is not a bridge. This is a culvert as part of a drainage system, much as, DPW would see in various situations in town.
Mhm. Mhm. So, and yeah, there seem to be a number of working papers out there that specifically excluded drainage from this because by its nature it tends not to be fish filled.
Correct.
So, commissioners, anybody have a question regarding this? Okay. And Janet, given the artificial nature and intermittent nature of this and the unlikelihood of fish and things of that sort, um, what else would you like to add?
So I think it would be helpful um, i- if Mark could at least address why the stream crossing standards, can't be met. In the guidance I've seen from DEP, this wouldn't be exempt, but clearly, if the site constraints make it impossible to meet the standards, then there's definitely flexibility there. But it's really up to the applicant to make that case. So what I would suggest is we get additional information as to why the stream crossing standards won't be met. And then also send that and the entire amendment request to DEP for their comments. And then also have this go to the town engineer for his comments. And then I think we've, done a really thorough review of this. I don't see any reason not to permit this, but I think we do need to at least have something in writing that addresses the stream crossing standards, and that they're making every effort to meet those to the maximum extent practicable, and then getting feedback, any comments from DEP and then town engineer. And then, as I mentioned, a PE stamp on the site plan would be great. And then the other thing I'm going to look at more closely is whether the waiver requests require a waiver fee in this case. There are four waivers. And so those would be my only comments then on the culvert portion of the amendment request.
Okay. So, and where do you see grandfathering playing a role in throughout the town for culverts?
No, if it's a repair, there are some, well, there is flexibility both at the state level and in our bylaw for repairing and replacement, but you still have to at least address what the requirements are and why they can't be met and why they don't negatively impact the interests under the WPA.
Okay. So I think one of the words that was used by Mark and also was comes out in numerous locations in the upstream water standards is impracticable. And so clearly they were anticipating things of this sort. And commissioners, just as Mark confirmed, in using any sort of round culvert, the stream standard obviously is expecting larger streams and rivers. If you were to fully meet it, you would have your stream bed and your culvert or your bridge or your channel would be 1.2 times as wide as that, which then creates a larger structure. All of this is geared towards protecting fish flow and amphibian flow and things of that nature. And generally in areas that don't have alternative egress for amphibians, for example, they can just walk across the banks there. So I don't disagree with Janet in the fact that having that rationale spelled out by the applicant is appropriate so that they can show that they considered stream standards and there are mechanisms within those standards to address things just like this and why they would be looking for a waiver. But I can't impress upon you enough that this is one of the more minimal concepts that they barely address in the stream standards because they're dealing with much larger structures and much larger bodies of water and perennial for the most part. Does that give you the guidance of the information we'd be looking for, Mark?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable. I understand Janet's concern and sort of putting the burden on us to some extent, and we'll do that. And I think you know what to expect and what's coming based on this discussion. You know, it sounds like I think you're generally, on board with why we're doing this and what the approach is, and that clearly I think what's important to not lose sight of is that the best solution here is an improved culvert, versus blowing, this entire crossing apart for no reason other than to fit some criteria on a sheet somewhere.
Well, and also one of the in the stream standards, they also note that cost is a
Yes.
reasonable thing to raise.
That's right.
And really for something that floods, 8 times a year or something, for storm management, and which is another thing to raise, that we can, and we've been very big. I was just going over a stream crossing I had when I first moved to town, and much of the town concerns were maintaining the rural nature of things. And this is in line with that. Anna, I see that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree. I think just a bit more explanation on the application is good. And yeah, a giant tall culvert that makes a huge bridge or blowing out the bed seems too much. I would just point out that even though it's a farm ditch, it is now a wetlands. And so that is not a great reason, but everything else is a really compelling reason. So we should just concentrate on that side.
The reason it was mentioned was as a drainage ditch, as opposed to so it is a wetlands.
Yeah.
The crossing of a stream that is created in essence by default, intermittent or not, but intermittent plays a role in there as well, is addressed in stream crossing standards in literature relative to not being directly applicable.
Sure.
And that's something that Mark can pull up. It's interesting just to bring up my own stream crossing. My original approval 30 some odd years ago to get through the ZBA, I had to build a bridge that was 3 feet higher than the surrounding grade. So both up, going across and down. And one of the people was concerned about it being a structure, and it was once I mentioned that and a structure was a combination of materials. Once I said that I would timber peg it, so it was all the same material. The chair banged the hammer down, and we didn't have to go forward with that. The Conservation Commission, we put a temporary bridge in that was done with steel beams. The Conservation Commission, actually, we amended the order of conditions, and the Conservation Commission accepted a flat crossing. Because they didn't want to have something sticking up above the surrounding area. So it was.
And if I recall, John, you also discovered that the that the old crossing was weight bearing enough.
Well, we had the old
Oh.
crossing was originally it was a section of railroad ties and rails
Right.
attached and had been used for farm stuff for years. We replaced that on a temporary basis, but we put it in on a permanent, with a permanent protocol, with much beefier steel beams and things of that sort. And I actually ran across all this because the homeowner had the new homeowner has a propane truck that didn't want to cross it because they wanted to know what it was rated as. And on that amendment, which I pulled up because I don't throw things away apparently, it was the Conservation Commission called out that it was rated in excess of 90,000 pounds, and so. But
Right.
no, excellent memory, Tim. So that was. So anyway,
I remember that you had this very elaborate bridge that you presented, and then you came back and said, "Never mind."
right. Well, yeah, and we did that because
Basically.
there was a recalcitrant person on the ZBA. Oh, and do you remember Frank Tiberi? Oh,
Very
not Frank
well.
Tiberi. No, there was another person, a neighbor, who was a gadfly, and he was concerned that if we put in footings and a heavy truck went over the footing, whether it would raise the water table at his house, which was 40 feet
Oh.
higher than, than we were. So I digress a little bit, but that's part of the reason why that other design
Oh,
was
yeah.
generated.
So John, the moral of the story is let's not overthink bridges.
Precise. Well, let's say if let's try to avoid them if possible.
Or avoid bridge, but let's not
Yeah.
overthink crossings. I'm
Right.
I'm doing a project in Vermont right now, and I drive around in these gravel roads, and obviously Vermont is riddled with culverts. And I watch these guys putting culverts in a day. Here, one day it's in, it's gone. The next day it's in, and they're so successful. And they're just,
Mhm.
and that's how they maintain these gravel roads and the drainage along them. Just
Well, and I think the stormwater, the stream standards are useful for actual streams and
for streams and
things like that.
rivers. Yeah.
Yes, and it's interesting that they barely touch down on this level of
Correct.
things. But I think given that we're running into a few of these, and I think it would behoove us to uh, get this down to a little bit more of a science as we move forward, so that we can let people know what we're looking for.
Sure. That's fine.
Great. So we're looking forward to it. I appreciate that.
All right.
Um,
And then would you like me to keep moving so we can?
Yeah, I think we don't want to hold it up on this one, and we go ahead and move towards to the next stage of things here.
And Janet, well, on the final, no problem. We can get Rob to stamp it for us. So the next item, so the first two items were associated with the culvert in the area around the culvert, items 1 and 2. Items 3 and 4 deal with vegetation. Item 3 deals with additional dead ash trees right in that same area. So subsequently, of course, in order to be comprehensive, we wanted to make sure that obviously any dead trees in the area of all this work were removed. And there are, I believe it's 5 to 6, I guess, white ash at this point, if you include probably some of the saplings. There are 5 to 6 of these white ash that are dead in that general area that we had done some right down around here at one point, a little further in, but not these at the crossing for some reason. So we just wanted to, and we subsequently had gotten permission to additionally take those after a site visit with Janet. And I just wanted to make sure we included these as we maintain our compliance on the project, which has been going very well, thanks to everyone's efforts. That there are a bunch right here around this very culvert crossing.
And are you mentioned some of them are dead, and others who are going to be in the way of the
They're either dead or in severe decline.
Okay.
It's-
And you're
there's all-
finding that in many ash trees, or?
Yes, yeah, ash are goners basically in this area.
Mhm.
You're not going to be able
And
to.
Janet, are you familiar with these trees? Janet?
Yes, I think it's been a little bit since I've been out there, but I do remember looking at, a lot of the perimeter. I have not inspected those particular trees, however, but just visually, they don't look like they're in good shape.
So okay, and then continuing on.
Yes, sure,
Mark?
John. Continuing on. So the last item, number 4, has to do with the progress, which we've provided an update to date in the annual reporting. A lot of work has been done in removing, in the first round, primarily a lot of the woody invasives, the glossy buckthorn, euonymus, and a lot of that was, of course, along these edges, because if many of you recall, the project at 143 did not actually involve a lot of clearing, since it was an existing site with existing landscapes, and we were building in the open areas for the most part. There was limited clearing along the edges. However, there had already been a pretty healthy population of non-native invasive woody species. Once these were removed, and a lot of the vines that were going upwards were removed. So, yep, here we go. What we ended up with was quite an explosion of bittersweet, in addition to some garlic mustard on the ground floor. You can see here, we sort of have, the best of all the most aggressive players. Therefore, at this point, we feel strongly from experience, my own experience, as many of you know, that, in order to capture whatever might be here for a desirable seed bank, we need to, there's no way to mechanically and physically remove, every single one of these bittersweet shoots. We need to start using targeted herbicide applications to our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the areas some are extremely colonized, like this. Others, you can see here, much more manageable, and a lot of nice native woodland sedges starting to come back in on the edge. And that's what we're hoping for. Here, sort of a mishmash, a little bit of everything. Same here, garlic mustard. And I think if I just go down, here we go. Here's another, partially shaded border where we've had a lot of success. We do have some garlic mustard coming in here, but we can see the carex, the oak sedge or such coming back here, which is really quite nice, and what we're hoping for long term. In addition to, the planting plan that we have in place as part of the overall site plan along those edges. And same here. So you can, so these bittersweet vines, which are basically yearlings, I call them, so this is what they're emerging as with 1 year's growth. We'd like to use herbicide to really target those, to kill off the rootstock and kind of stop this proliferation of that. In addition to the garlic mustard, which is much more receptive to an herbicide application.
Mm-hmm. And Janet, your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is really a continuation of the herbicide waiver that the commission previously approved. So I don't see any issues with this. Again, it's limited herbicide use. I believe it's just cut and dab. Is that correct?
So cut and dab or swab. So for example, let me go back to these bittersweet vines, Janet. So on the bittersweet vines, we have a schedule here that we've proposed. So on the bittersweet, so any of these, for either of these, for example, which is definitely our dominant player. On these, what we typically recommend is getting it onto the foliage by wiping.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or foliar, if the commission so desires to approve, controlled foliar spray is also extremely effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for things of this sort, it's hitting the foliage gives you the root access.
That's right. So these are, like I said, these are yearlings. They're very active. They're translocating a lot of material in both directions, and letting the plant do the work for us with
Mhm.
with those applications, foliar applications, I think is really the way to kind of go, because they've taken advantage of the situation. We removed all these aggressive vines that were coming up here in buckthorn, and they're just loving life right now.
And how do you ensure that you, for example, the sedges that were coming back, that there's no overspray there?
So when we have an area like this, for example, where there's selective, we would not spray, we would rather wipe.
Mm-hmm.
If it's predominantly the non-desirable, we would use a foliar spray, or dropping there. You can do droplets on. We can also take advantage sometimes, if we're lucky, the seasonality will work for us, where the sedge can be cut back or it goes dormant, and we may still have some foliage. That is another trick we use with the herbaceous, is cut the herbaceous back and use a foliar spray, for example. And if there's no foliage on the herbaceous at the time of that application, it can't uptake glyphosate, and therefore it doesn't affect it.
Okay. Okay, Janet, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this portion of it makes sense. And again, the commission has previously reviewed the invasive management plan and did approve an herbicide waiver.
Okay, thanks. So let's see. Anything else to touch on, Mark?
No, thank you. If happy to get those other couple of items with regard to the culvert off to you guys. If there's a way with the amendment process to essentially sign off on items 3 and 4, I know the vegetation crews are anxious to get going on that.
I don't know. I mean, I'd be more than happy, but I'm not sure if we can do that as a if we'd have to do that as a separate amendment, or what are our options there, Janet?
Or as Janet mentioned, I guess technically we do, although we're providing an update, I guess technically we do have an herbicide waiver.
Right, you have you have that.
Yeah, so maybe that one, I mean, that one I think is the most pressing.
And your thoughts,
Yeah,
Janet?
the ash trees could be done at the time of the culvert work.
Janet?
Yeah, I think if the commission were to reconfirm the herbicide waiver to these additional areas, that makes sense. And then at the next meeting, we can approve the actual amendment
Okay.
as a whole.
Okay. Then so we won't be closing the hearing, because we'll be you'll see, it will remain open, but I will ask for a vote of confirmation to proceed with the additional herbicide application as noted.
Sure. So moved.
Thank you. Any can I have a second from someone? Not Sarah?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor? Anna?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Okay, then I will look forward. So our next meeting is in 3 weeks, Mark. Will you have everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Then
we'll plan on that. I'll email Janet and Lori, of course, and just make sure we're on that.
Okey-doke. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, commission members.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay, and you can take down your sharing,
Oh, yes, of course. Stop share. There we
please.
go. Okay,
Okey-doke.
good.
Is any my screen is kind of wigging out a little bit on Zoom. Is anyone else experiencing anything unusual?
No.
No. Okay. Well, we'll see if it stops. Let's see. Next up, we have 12 Fox Run. Some wetland concerns. Janet, why don't you fill us in?
Sure. So I had received a message from the office about possible work in a wetland buffer zone, some tree removals. And so our normal review process is I did go out to the property. No one was home, so I was reluctant to actually go further on the property. But I did see some work going on in the back. And GIS indicates there are wetlands towards the back of the property. So we did ask at the owner, Matt Cully, attend the meeting. He's here tonight. And And so usually our next step would be just to hear from the homeowner, what they're doing on the site, if they're aware there are any wetlands, and then schedule a site inspection just so we can walk the property with the homeowner.
Yeah,
Mhm.
hey everybody. Yeah, thanks. It's great to meet you. So my name's Matt. My wife and I are both avid naturalists. She's a wildlife biologist. She's a state licensed wildlife rehabber, and pretty much a lover of all things nature. So essentially, our goal is really just to restore the property back to nature to promote just a healthier ecosystem for most of the flora, insects, birds, and native fauna. The woodlands portion in the back of the property has really been neglected for a number of years, not just the prior owners, but the one before that, such that invasive species have really taken aggressively over most of the natural vegetation all around the perimeter of the property. So essentially what we've been doing is we've removed bittersweet, buckthorn, garlic mustard, which is all extremely pervasive. You can still see the vines hanging. I'm sure you probably saw them when you were there. Really we're in the process of just repopulating it with all native vegetation. I guess one thing to note with respect to kind of the one before this, everything was hand pulled. We used no sprays, herbicides, toxins, or anything across any part of the property. And within that, we obviously did not remove any native plants. I mean, our whole goal here is we really want a vibrant ecosystem that has native plants for bugs, birds, etc. And so we didn't do anything that the bottom right-hand corner, the back corner on the farthest away that you could probably see, Janet, is the area that has a tiny bit of wetlands. We used the site plan that we had to make sure that we weren't doing anything too close to that other than just maintenance and removing dead wood, downed trees. And we left every single healthy tree, everything that wasn't dead. And we're just really in the process of trying to bring everything back to life and help it survive bittersweet.
So Matt, did you take any trees down?
Only dead trees.
Mm-hmm. And Janet, have you been out there yourself?
I really have not walked the property extensively, no.
Okay.
There were two massive trees, by the way, that just fell. And so one was like hanging, so it was kind of a widowmaker, if you will. So that was kind of the initial start of it.
And do you have any photographs before and after at all, Matt, by any chance?
I'm not sure if we have, like, again, I don't think we took any photos within the woods, just because I guess I didn't realize that it would be a problem to take down bittersweet and deadwood.
Okay. And Janet, where are the wetlands relative to this?
So
Or other?
The state GIS does show, if you're looking from Fox Run onto the property, in the far back right corner. But those again,
All right. Mm-hmm.
the site conditions can also include there can be other wetlands on the site that aren't visible.
The property moves up from there, so there is an existing. I think that the old owners of Donnelly had some sort of a rock thing back there. We obviously didn't touch any of that as well.
You could have a golf tee up there.
Yes, I think
so-
that's the original. We
didn't go down that far.
Oh, it didn't? Okay.
No, it was all up on.
Yeah, actually, two of the commissioners are neighbors of yours.
Yes.
So Jen, I'm not sure if this requires a full site visit or if it's just something that you could arrange a meeting with Matt.
Okay.
Based on the description and so forth, and get some proof of his wife's bona fides.
Just send you some bird photos.
Then I think that's the next step to take. Okay.
Great. And Matt, did you say you had an existing site plan, or I'm not sure if I heard.
We looked at there was a plan that was from when the builder had built the house. I think the house was built in 2021. And so we're not doing anything other than maintenance anywhere near the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think a site visit should ascertain all that, and you can go over your plans, and Janet can give you some feedback on that. Okay. So why don't we why don't you make sure the two of you communicate? And do you have each other's contact info?
I'm
Yes,
not, do you have my email by
I
chance?
believe I have your wife's email. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Paul sent us.
And then, yeah, then exchange phone numbers or whatnot, and then we'll, Janet will determine when you come back. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Matt, and good luck. Appreciate it. Okay, next up is 31 Springdale, enforcement order compliance. Let's see, Will, why don't you fill us in on what's been holding this up?
Hey, guys.
Similar to, we had a
Yep.
conversation earlier this evening that you can run through.
Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. I'm not in the most ideal
No, we got you.
surroundings, but the main holdup was there was quite a prolonged process in retaining an engineer or even getting anyone to call me back. So we did hear back from an engineer who sent us a quote, and we have retained, but the cost is just, very astronomical. So I was just looking for maybe some feedback I can give him to kind of adjust the scope. Because initially when we had these talks, any sort of engineering plan wasn't going to be required. And then it was just kind of an add-on thing that was brought up during a site visit that resulted in, this requirement for an engineering survey to be done. And that's what I have the quote for. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page as far as the scope required of engineering work, just so I'm not, throwing
Mhm.
more money at this than we have to, just, given the scope of other improvements to the house and property that we're burdened with at the moment.
So commissioners, I reviewed kind of the history of this, and somewhere there was a miscommunication somewhere that he required a full-on engineer survey for this. And so, and Janet, let me know if I miss anything here. We originally had an enforcement order here because work was started within 25 feet of the in essence, what's a retaining pond there for Springdale drainage there. And then as they proceeded, there was notice that it looked like there had been some fill over the line with the LCT versus 31 Springdale. And the question was, where's the line? And that was, I think that's where the request for the engineer came in, to just do a survey to get that line demarcated so that we can determine that. And then another thing that happened was from the back of that retaining pond, it's fed with an invert from the street, from catch basins from the street. And then on the back side of it, at a higher elevation than the invert from the street, is an outfall pipe that went through we don't know if it was a homeowner or if it was the highway department who utilizes that. There was around 20 feet of rotting steel culvert that had been covered over with ground, and then there was a open shallow trench that proceeded down towards Trout Brook and actually pretty much ended it in the middle of the backyard there because the grade changed, and then it just dispersed down towards that area. I've been out to the site on several occasions there, and it appears to be upland on both sides of that trench. Again, we're back to sort of a farm drainage thing. I'm not sure if that was initiated by the town. However, when I was there, it basically was filled with growing grass and leaves, and is really there as an outfall for the retaining pond that deals with the town drainage. Will, in a moment of something, in terms of he was repairing and decided to replace the culvert that was originally there, and And while he was at it, he decided that he would add additional culvert and take it to where the end of, or virtually to the end of the trench there. Didn't change the bottom of it, but what he did was he put it in and then he covered it with dirt. So I think the question there is, I think, oh, and then on top of it, the engineers who had done site work there before was the septic system, and that was done by GLM. And obviously, as we know, GLM has shut down and dispersed, and so Will was not having any luck with them getting back to him. So the question I have is, one was I would reach out myself to Rob Truax because he has the plans and he has the survey information to see whether or not they can come out and just hit the points that they need to give us an idea of what's actually happening. And number two is, Janet, are there additional things that that I didn't cover that we want to have wrapped up? Oh, and before I go there, the last stage we got was a thing from Goddard and Associates for a planting plan, and Paul McManus had responded generally favorable, but he thought that it needed some more plants, and that's really the last stage that we're at on there. And so and then Goddard has come back with additional quotes for what things are going to cost that seem excessive. And I'm wondering if that might be able to be handled just via Paul McManus's oversight there. So, Janet?
So, yeah, Paul was taking the lead on this, but back in November, we did all have a site meeting. Will was there, Mitch Meslanka from Goddard, Paul, myself were there. And I don't recall anyone indicating that we needed a new surveyed site plan because you know, it had been surveyed when the septic went in, and that was a plan that we also had looked at for an RDA. But I know an initial restoration, and it was more than just planting, it was restoration. There was some removal of fill. There was fill in the small retaining area on the bank, and also on the other side, abutting the DLCT land. There was definitely fill over on Will's property and DLCT.
And trees.
And there were some tree removals. So there was a full restoration plan. I believe Goddard did a first proposal.
Goddard didn't do anything for the DLCT side of the property, I don't believe, and I'm not sure that's ever been surveyed.
Okay.
And I think that's where, from when I can get at the talk to Will, there was mentioning of survey, and I think Will then approached engineers as a layperson and asked for a quote on surveying, and they made their own assumptions on what a scope of work would be. And they talked about locating the house, locating everything else around the house.
We need the lot line
as
and
well,
to
right.
determine how much fill is over there
Mm-hmm.
and how many
Yeah.
trees on that side were taken out.
Mm-hmm. So, Will,
I'm
is
putting
there,
on both my hats right now.
yeah, no, I understand. So and that can be ascertained with somebody who just goes out there, especially if they have the information already in their computers, such as Rob Truax, and then once they show where the line is, then there can be a determination on what changes have been done. And I see the quotes that Will is getting right now are in the $8,000 range just to do a survey, which are just completely bonkers. I understand things have changed, but they haven't changed that much. And I think getting somebody who already has the information. I did not call Rob because Will had let us know that he had already lined up an engineer, but had not yet received the quote. And so I'm, as I mentioned at the last meeting, but then you got this engineer. I am willing to contact Rob Truax to see if we can get him to use his data and resolve this. And then at that point, we can ascertain what changes have been done on the ground and finish that up. Will, what with the plan that you have from that septic system, did you measure out to where approximately your lot line is on the left?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, you know, an expert, so it's, you know, you can go off the scale and try to get close. But you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable, you know, obviously I'm not the
Okay.
professional, so you know, obviously a professional does need to come in and stake that lot line, which is obviously
Okay.
a, you know, a different scope of work than, you know, a full site engineering plan.
One of the other things is I recommended to Will to find out whether Rob Truax does hydraulic engineering to determine whether the culvert that that Will extended is adequate, whether it, you know, is useful versus pulling it all out, and get a professional opinion or review on that as well. So my sense on this is with the discussion that I had with Will and what he's presented, I would reach out to Rob Truax and try to get this done sooner rather than later and avoid the delays he's been having, and see where we're at with whether we can get Rob out there in a reasonable period of time and
And get
report back at our next meeting. So we really need that left property line to really make a you know, see what's going on there.
And John, I'll follow up with Paul McManus to find out what he understands are the next steps in terms of what's needed to complete the restoration plan. I think we're very close.
That's the frustration. It turns out I think we were getting a little perturbed at how long this was taking, and yet we are. I agree with you. I think we are close to getting this resolved. So I think it behooves us rather than to start fining for something is that we're so close to finishing up to you know, pay attention and see if we can get this and keep Will focused on getting this clarified here. Does anybody have any concerns or questions? Okay, then Will, I will be in touch with you towards the end of next week.
Sure.
Okay.
And John, just to put a cap on it, are we making a determination on the scope of engineering work required? Just so I can be clear when I, you know.
I think the things we would want is we want your left property line
just flagged essentially, right?
With yeah. And all the way from the street all the way to the back, and we want probably a location of the of your trench there.
And once it's flagged, DLCT would be happy to put in some bounds.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd love to put in
So then we can just keep it super clear.
Well, I think we would behoove an engineer or a surveyor who would be out there to locate the stumps from any trees that are cut in proximity to the lot line there.
Yeah, I've never, and you know, I know that, you know, the amount of cutting is not, you know, really the purview of the Conservation Commission, but I've never cut anything on that lot line. And, you know, I have stuff to support that. And I would never, you know, encroach on another knowingly, you know, an abutting property.
Since we don't know where the lot line is, we don't really know.
Totally.
So
right. And it may not have been you. It may have been the previous owner that did it. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately, you bought the liability, unfortunately.
Yeah. So okay.
Lucky you.
Any other concerns that anyone wants to bring up just to aid Will? Okay, so there you go. Well, the lot line, any tree cutting, you know, within 50 feet on either side of the lot line.
And John, you mentioned locating the trench. That's located on the GLM plan.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
So,
well, then get a measurement, if it's on the GLM plan, if we can get Rob to get involved here, then measure out the buried part of the trench.
so
Sure.
just before you go, Will, just wanted to see if Stephen had any comments or questions. He's DLCT's ranger.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time now, but we communicated over email, I think over the
Mhm.
winter.
So that's what he looks like. So, hey, Stephen, do you want to unmute if you have any,
I think
nope,
he's,
you're still muted.
can you ask him to unmute?
I did, but, oh, yeah,
There we go.
there we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was muted apparently.
If I could just get notice once the staking is done, so that we can evaluate the extent of any encroachment that has taken place.
Yep, absolutely. That, I was gonna say that's a given, but now it's verbally stated, so thanks. Okay, then why don't we do that, Will, and let's stay on top of it, okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Next we have 59 Main Street. Janet, why don't you fill us in?
So a couple weeks ago, the office had received a message of seeing some trucks bringing in fill at 59 Main Street. I did do a site meeting and just a very preliminary one. It did look like there had been some fill brought in. Trout Brook is in the very back of the property. And the commission decided a site meeting was appropriate. We met with Brian Austin, who's in the meeting tonight. John actually was out at the property twice. John met
I
with,
get enough of this.
and then Amy, myself, and John had a subsequent meeting with Brian on the phone remotely. I included my inspection report and some photos. So in terms of the fill being brought in, it appears that that is outside the riverfront area. And again, it's a level property. We saw no evidence of runoff or sedimentation. There were some structures that were within riverfront, but they look like they have been there for a very long time. As is a boardwalk that crosses Trout Brook from 59 Main to Brian's property at 5 Edgewater Drive. Very well-built boardwalk, one that we would definitely have approved. I don't see removing it as further protecting the wetlands. So we really saw no disturbance within the riverfront, or I didn't observe any evidence of any alteration or negative impact. But I thought maybe Amy and John could also share their observations and then determine if any follow-up is needed. But I would not recommend follow-up at this point.
But Amy, you have anything to add?
No. I mean, I think like Janet said, all the fill was pretty far outside the any jurisdictional area, and aside from the fact that I think you're going to have a hard time getting trees in there because it's pretty rocky and hard. I think it's fine.
So I agree. It basically confirmed what Brian had told us before, which was that this was brought in order to increase the grade above some wet spots, so that he could get some fruit trees in there that don't do well sitting in high water tables. Yeah, you may need to augment that with a little sand or something, because there seems to be some clay through there. But it's basically non-jurisdictional, and there's no indication of any runoff or anything like that that would affect our jurisdiction there. And so we appreciated the tour, both real life and by phone. And I think at this point, every now and then, if you know, if you're changing things there, if you just give us a quick call, that would be helpful.
Yes.
So we don't go 18 years apart. And yeah, so thank you very much, and proceed.
Okay, thank you. When I get the trees in, I'll invite you back.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a
all
good
very
evening.
much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Next, 29 Saddle Ridge. I'd said that I would work with Vadran Pierre on that. I stopped by yesterday because I've been actually at a bunch of nurseries for work purposes, and I discussed things with Vadran by phone. Last we had a meeting, we voted that we wanted to have additional vegetation in there beyond the plan that Deb had produced. He has done a little bit of additional planting with some 30-inch shrubs as opposed to 12-inch shrubs, which is helpful. They're Ilex verticulator and things that, you know, perfectly appropriate. The site looks much better than we'd seen it before. There's encroachment coming down from the uplands of ferns and sedges, and he has no plans to keep anything cut back. That's an area that had a thin level of, I wouldn't even, it looks similar to what we saw up on I don't know if it was CRAR or whatever, but basically shredded, you know, when they took down some of the stumps, they shredded the stumps as opposed to creating full-on wood chips. And there seems to be, he's been staying on top of invasives, which is something I discussed with him, and also held out to him as to why it behooved him to get more plants in there, because they would outcompete the, if he got the appropriate ones, that they would help outcompete the invasives. And so in general, he probably could still go with a few extra plants, but there's the ones that have, it appears to be 100% success rate. There were a few that we discussed augmenting with soil around the roots and things of that nature, but it is much better. And he has an aerator in the pond, or the ILSF, if you'd like to call it. And because of mosquitoes, because it's basically static water. And so he uses that to keep the water disturbed, and that has cut down his mosquito load significantly. I also saw his son in action, the son he was concerned about relative to a fence and so forth. And he has every right to be concerned. So, you know, he's on top of him, but the son has his clearly a strong personality there, and I can see his concern about that. So I think at this point, I will monitor with him through the end of the year, and let you know at what point I think things have been are basically set to be completed. So, any questions on that?
This sounded really good. Can we get like a photo at the end of the summer to see how it's going so we can just stick it in
Yeah,
the file?
yeah. I took some photos yesterday, and they pretty much showed all that. They showed but I think the end of the summer we'll get some things that are even fuller. I was surprised. Things seem to be he's watering them. He's being conscientious, and it was
Great.
interesting to see the ferns marching their way back down. So and keep in mind this in essence, I also looked at the original listing picture. And the original picture we saw when they had disturbed things, and it's basically surrounded by a pine forest. So there you go. I think that's an appropriate thing to do at the end of the probably end of September. So okay, Anna, do we have our land management update?
The big news was, and Janet can speak to this more, the Beatles were released last week, I think. I couldn't go because of the heat, but Greg was there, and I think Greg's wife was there, and Bill released the Beatles, and there's a photo that went around, and yep, that's a bunch of beetles eating spurge, and it's pretty exciting. So Janet, do you know if everyone went down to Valley Farm?
So Bill decided it would be best to release all the beetles at Springdale. And he had the great idea that as they eat and multiply, we will capture some in theory and bring them over to Valley Farm. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting project, and he's going to be monitoring for us for free of charge because he's very interested in how this works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So excited about it.
I noticed in emails that that the owners of 41, is it still 41 or is it 43?
46.
46, I'm sorry, excuse me. I get my ones, all my prime numbers instead of that. Anyway, they've had voiced a concern about the beetles, which reasonable that, you know, would they leave and start eating other things? Do you know if did Bill have a chance to respond to them to assuage them as to the, you know, their limited diet?
Yes, so he replied, I think the same day, and he did copy everyone on that. And he said they won't eat your tomatoes and cucumbers. They only go after cypress spurge. And we'll hope that holds true and that some kind of variant going on here. But yes, he did reply. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. Anything else, Anna?
We're getting organized for building bridges. Our next meeting's probably into the 15th, so I guess 2.5 weeks. And Amy, I asked Greg for Jay Crocker's contact info because I realized I don't have it. But if you have it, happy to organize getting the tree taken out.
Oh, okay. So then, and so was not part of last year's budget, right? So we have a
No.
budget for that, so we can just apply that against this year's budget. Okay.
Yep.
Did you get any pricing from Jay of what that would run, or?
That's what I got to ask.
Oh, okay. And that's just to take that down and move it to his location, but not necessarily to cut it up yet, or
I
do
think
you
we
know?
wanted it milled.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Then I'll get that contact info over to you.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Amy, you're muted.
Sorry. I don't have his contact information, but I think your brother does. Well, I might,
Yeah,
but I'd have to
I-
struggle for it.
I know Greg has it, so it's in the mix somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Your brother or Greg have it, for sure, because they had to organize him for the walk.
Yeah.
Okay, doke. Let's see. Then we have Janet's agent report.
Yes, so this should be pretty quick. We had asked Paul McGovern to come to our meeting to talk about Red Robin. They are closing that out, but their certificate of compliance has been delayed. He was on vacation. He was going to be back in Ireland, but he said he would come to our next meeting to provide an update on that. 6 Meadowbrook, that's the Dave Parrish new build. They've submitted their certificate of compliance finally, and that will be on our next agenda as well. And then the electronic signature procedure, I'm going to follow up with the registry. So nothing new on that. Amy had sent out an email. The Corps of Engineers is having a info session on a new master plan. I think it's been how many years, Amy? 20 years or more?
I think the last one was 84 or 86.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
Just, you can't even possibly read the maps. They're so fuzzy.
so that could be of interest. I think, Amy, you said you were hoping to attend that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. It's I'm a little tight on time. It's like 5 to 7 in Millis,
Yeah.
and I ride at Sage that afternoon, so.
Okay. And then you already heard about the beetles. And then the draft newsletter I sent out was on chemical-free mosquito control. It was basically a repeat from a previous article, I think a year ago. And that was the basis of our flyer as well. So if people have any tweaks or revisions, if you can let me know by 12 tomorrow. But I think everyone did review that last round last year ago. And then just a quick update on where we are with things in the office. I had been in touch with some colleagues in other towns to see if they knew anyone who could help us out on an interim basis until we hire a new admin. The admin in Sherborne, Deborah Takis, his name came up, and she was interested in helping us out as well as applying for the permanent position. So John has been busy trying to work out with HR how we get her on board in an interim basis so she can help us out. Today was a filing deadline, so I was in the office for several hours answering questions and taking in new applications. But I just don't have the time to do all of the administrative work on top of my own work. But I'm trying to make sure I do what has to be done until Deborah can join us. But she's worked working with municipal agencies and Concoms for many years, and I think she would be a great fit. So hopefully that will work out. And then the last thing is, I had sent an email. John and I had a conversation about a DPW project, Old Farm Road Culvert. John has followed up with Kevin, and so we're going to have additional conversations on that about what do they need to do. We don't want to overburden them, but they do need to meet whatever regulatory process is. But again, as you heard in the previous conversation at the top of the meeting, the stream crossing standards are meant to encourage a certain design to help protect wetlands and wildlife. But there are certainly situations where that's just not practicable. So, but I think we'll have more conversation. And John, did you think Kevin was going to be able to attend our next meeting? Is that right?
So, I'm not sure. He and I pledged we were going to discuss some. He wanted to see how things went tonight, and I wanted to get him some. I wanted to digest some of the information you'd sent to me, and to discuss things with him as well. One of the concerns, as I alluded to earlier, is that the regulations are sort of built in a as if it's a perfect world and there's unlimited funds. And it applies certain things that are absolutely appropriate. And I think it's a great thing to be cognizant of when it comes to true perennial streams, tributaries, and things of that sort. And then becomes impracticable, which is a term that we're probably going to run into frequently when it comes to culverts and things of that sort. However, they also talk about, as I also alluded to, installation of or replacing of culverts, that there's room for improvement to make sure that your slope's not too great, that your angle of attack is not too hard, that you're putting in your head walls are done in a certain manner. Those are appropriate, I think, to this, and I think figuring out the best way for the highway department to and working with us to come up with, because as I mentioned also earlier, generally a culvert by the area of the formula that they use, they take a look at the width and the height of the free area, the flowable area inside a culvert, and then they divide that into the length of the culvert. And as Mark Cooperman agreed with, he said, once you do all that, if you were to meet the actual standards, your culvert becomes anywhere from 4 to 8 feet wide, which is not practicable. And so so I think in many cases there will be variances and required, but we'll get down a science. The hope is to say this is what was reviewed. This is why this is the best way to go. It doesn't disturb, it disturbs less of the stream bank and so forth. But in other circumstances, it may be better for a box culvert, a smaller mid-sized box culvert that has some area underneath it that allows for wildlife to go along some sort of bank, which we did a number of years ago. We had somebody in front of us where they did a box culvert, and then had stone and gravel put in on the bottom, and then it came up beyond the average water level so that critters could scoop by as well. So I think it's instructive, and it's something that we'll be looking at, but it's the state seems to have recognized that in many cases it's not cost effective when it comes to things like that. Also, I was surprised on Old Farm Road, that's an intermittent stream, and which makes sense now once I looked up the USGS map. But it's because sometimes it flows, and you can't imagine it not being a perennial, but it clearly is not noted as such. So that's so I will be continuing talking with Kevin and outline all that, and then we would like to get it so that we can make that work smoothly, so that each one can be done according to a formula, so that we don't incur major costs for minor crossings. So
So John,
works.
oh, I'm sorry. Go on, Anna.
Oh, it's fine. I was gonna say, sounds good to be going over the standards and everything. I know there are a bunch of undersized culverts, so as we build our process, we need to take into that account, because I think we will find ourselves very sad as stormwater increases if we replace two small culverts with two small culverts.
well, it's interesting. So what we're doing on Old Farm, or what they're proposing, is they have a 12-inch culvert that was not adequate, clearly, probably by the 50s. And then they added an 8-inch culvert, or maybe it's a 10 and an 8. And they're replacing it with an 18. And as the cube of the radius, increases significantly the flow there. And yet on places like that, again, something to bring up to the highway department is debris. What's the best way to handle debris from clogging stuff like that? And where do they have historical flooding due to that? So I think it's an opportunity for us to move forward and do things better, and yet also cost effective. Janet?
So John, if you talk to Kevin soon, I just want to give you a heads up. I think I mentioned this already. So Old Farm Water Trust, they have half of the neighborhood down Old Farm have decided to hook up to Aquarian. So there's an existing water main on Walpole Street. And so I was contacted by their engineers. Oh, we want to put a water main halfway down the road. It's going to cross at least one town culvert. I was like, oh, that sounds complicated. And so Mike Angieri, the town engineer, is involved. He's meeting with them. I have to think Kevin McCabe knows about this too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the same culvert or not, but
no, I thought so as well, and I went and looked at it, because they said it's actually 5 Old Farm Road, and the one we're looking at is at 17.
okay.
So it's actually much closer to Walpole Street.
Okay.
And I'm curious, because I don't know if they're looking to replace the culvert, or if they're just looking to go under the culvert with a water line that has to be 4 feet down. Do you know, Janet?
They told me they were going to have to breach the existing culvert. Now,
Breach it?
if
Really?
that's an old clay pipe culvert, it's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
So the theory is to go under it, but they said they would likely have to breach it to go. So I don't.
Okay. And that's interesting, because, and again, I was equally surprised, is that is a perennial stream there. So we'll, I guess, Kevin is clearly familiar now. He's getting more familiar as we feed him stuff. And Mike, I was looking forward to talking to Mike Angieri as well, because I think he may be able to probably do some of these calculations in his head for these areas of coverage and stuff like that. But again, we'll see. It's unlikely, given the flow that's there, whether they would require a bridge. But we'll have them do the math on that, and we'll and see what it comes out to be.
Yeah, John, an 18 is a little bit more than twice a 10 and an 8.
Oh, is it really? Oh, I thought
Yeah.
it was only 10%. I was
No,
doing
it's
the
if
envelope.
you just do the squares, it's 81 as
And
opposed
64
to
or no.
25 plus 16, which is 41.
So the
Just twice.
so yeah, so that gives you, and it's a unimpeded 18 that would let branches through and
Right.
things of that sort. Also, that one on
Huge difference.
the one at 17, the joints of it have become have broken, so it's sort of going up and down under the street, so that definitely needs to be repaired. And it's an interesting thing because the state regulations view repair versus replacement. They seem to have some conflicts with that. They in one place they view them as equivalent, in other places they view them as different. But there basically is no way to repair a culvert that's broken, because at another place they recommend against relining culverts. So we'll figure out more stuff in terms of what's required there. All in light, and also in light of the what's practicable. So because one of the concerns the highway department expressed was that if they had to do a full-on stream study and engineering for every single culvert we have in town, they would do 3 a year at $50,000 a piece, and probably get shut down by the selectmen. So we'll figure it out. Anything else? Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Oh, and I wanted to finish up with Janet. So we both met Deborah, and then Deborah spent an hour and a half with Lori getting the lay of the land. And what's very helpful is Deborah knows how to use all the same programs, so that including some of the financial programs, and how to submit electronically to DEP, how to use what's called the VADAR system. So she's very facile with that sort of stuff. So she would hit the ground running. She has put in, because there's a transition, because we don't want to leave Joyce high and dry over in Sherburne, she's put in for approximately 17 hours a week, as opposed to on a temporary basis. And then the job was listed as both temporary and permanent, almost 2 separate listings. And I think if we treat her well, then she will apply for the permanent listing after that. But so she's hoping. I met with Human Resources today. They're sending, and they were out for a few days, and it's become very critical because we thought Deborah might have been able to join us tonight, but she wanted to have something in writing first, which is reasonable. And so, as far as I know, Robin in Human Resources is sending her the information that she needs, and hopefully that will be set up by Monday. And I will be out of town for up until next Thursday, but obviously I'll have email. So there you go. So that fingers crossed. That was very fortunate for us to be able to find somebody, and with those skills. So.
And John, I'll meet Deborah. Deborah did not get a key to the office, so I'll meet her. I'll make a copy of my key and meet her.
Oh, and did you check the messages? Did you get the pin from Chris?
No.
Oh,
So
you didn't get the pin for the phone?
yeah, he was going to change the pin, and
Yeah.
I tried to use it, and I couldn't. So I'm hoping.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. Well.
While, but
Mm.
but also
Well-
just to clarify, Deborah has already applied for the permanent position as well as the interim.
Okay. So and Robin wasn't clear on that, so we'll let her know about that. Okay. Good. So that's and she does minutes. So what a concept. So okay, great everyone. We're getting better and better at this. So
911.
What's that?
911 is the time.
Oh, there we go.
Ominous.
We can wait till 9:12 not to jinx it, but the anyway, hearing no objections, and thank you, everyone. Tonight's meeting
Yes,
is
and
adjourned.
Diego will, next time you'll be official. You'll be able to.
What's
Yeah,
that?
here's
Yep.
hoping.
Oh,
practice-
right,
so you
absolutely.
should practice saying I now.
Yes.
Right.
Is
right.
it I? Goy?
Make it
Well,
your
we
own.
have-
Ask and you raise your hand.
And then we have talk like a pirate night, which is always fun. So,
Okay.
okay. Night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Night.
Good night.